Today we're reading from the second book of Chronicles, chapter 29, verses 1 to 19. Hezekiah was king of Judah between the late 8th and early 7th centuries, and he was reckoned to follow in the footsteps of his ancestor, King David. All the kings following David were assessed by this standard. Not that David was perfect, but he was faithful to God. Hezekiah ordered a great turnout of the temple, and this probably meant more than chucking out the rubbish, although that is a regular necessity in any home or indeed church. It was no doubt about reform of the worship of the temple as well, to ensure that it conformed to the best standards of the Torah, and that any deviant practices which had crept in were rooted out. They were neglecting the regular practices that should have been carried out in the temple worship as well. So it sounds like a root and branch purification, and the priests and their assistants, the Levites, went to it with a will. It took them some weeks, so there must have been a lot to do. Why is this all recorded, is the relevant question to ask ourselves. Well, partly to show Hezekiah's virtues as he ordered it, but also as a warning and a challenge to those who came after, to ensure that they kept the temple and its worship up to snuff in future. They perceived a direct link between their worship and behaviour and the favour of their God, and therefore what happened to them, even their political successes and failures, all misfortunes or defeats or problems were seen as signs of God's disfavour. Now, we may not see quite the same direct, simple link between our actions and external events, good or bad. But it's still true to say that being in close relationship with God, in harmony with God, is the very best state to be in, whatever is happening in our external world. We will cope much better with accident or misfortune or trauma if we're sustained by that close and nourishing relationship with the source of life and love. Besides, a turnout is good for us all. It's quite therapeutic, and divesting ourselves of too much stuff is healthy, especially if we can pass some of it on to others who need it more. It's also good for us to have an internal rummage around in our spiritual lives and see what's gathering dust there. What happened to our habit of prayer, which used to be so regular? How come we don't seem to get to church so much these days? And is the thought of God on our minds quite as often as it used to be? And if we notice that we have abandoned the love that we had at first, in the words of Revelation, then it's time to act. Don't close the cupboard door on the mess inside. Don't sweep the dust under the carpet. Take it all out and have a good look at it. What to hold on to, what to get rid of. What can we realistically commit ourselves to in terms of regular spiritual practices? There's no point making promises that we cannot keep. A spiritual director can be a great help in talking through some of this, maybe making suggestions or ideas, and certainly following up as time goes on to see how we're doing in our reformed state. The Benedictines and other religious communities speak of a rule of life, and we can all decide on our own rule of life, which we can follow as part of our personal lifestyle. It will include habits of prayer and public worship, but it will be adapted to fit within our various work or family commitments so that it is possible to keep in the long term, even though that will require some commitment and discipline. Let's have that proper, thorough turnout, internally as well as externally, and get ourselves reconnected with the source of life and love.